Good morning to you all. Welcome to the next session on spatial analysis functionality and tools. I'm Kapil Oberoi. I'm a faculty in Geoinformatics department at IARS. In today's lecture, we'll see following points. We'll start with a review of the GIS data model because this lays a very important foundations for which the spatial data analysis is based. Then we'll see a formal definition of spatial data analysis, followed by the broad classifications of various capabilities of GIS with reference to spatial data analysis. Now, since with reference to GIS data models, which are of two types, either vector or raster, which means GIS allows us to represent the real world phenomena either in the form of a vector, which primitives are point, line, or polygon, or in the form of a grid or a pixels, a tessellation, for representing in the raster, for representing the real world in the raster model. So we'll see the spatial data analysis operations with reference to vector data and also spatial data analysis operation with reference to raster based data. That's why we are calling them as a vector based operations or raster based operations. We'll also discuss the comparisons of between the vector based and raster based spatial data analysis operations, because since there are two types of operations that we are saying based on the GIS data model, vector or raster, which one we should use, what should be the what should we keep in mind by performing these kinds of operations, because most we are sometimes limited with the data, sometimes limited with the software to carry out operations either in the vector mode or raster mode. So we'll do a little bit discussion on comparison, and finally we'll see some example on site suitability analysis, wherein whatever we will discuss during this class, we'll try to see how we can implement it by taking the case of a site suitability for a school. So with reference to GIS data model, GIS allows us to represent the geographic phenomena appearing in the real world either in the form of a raster, as we said, in the form of a pixel or a grid represented by tessellations, or in the form of a vector, which is the point, line, and the polygon. Now, given the real world phenomena, since we have to represent in the computer based system, so in the raster mode, if you talk about a water body or a stream, then the pixels wherein this phenomena is occurring, the values will be stored. For example, the B in this raster representation denotes the water body that pass across the steady region. The pixels wherein these trees are represented are here represented by the symbol G. Similarly, tree on this top left, top right corner here, and the house is represented by this BK value in this particular pixel. Now, if we talk about in the vector mode, then we have three primitives. We have a point, we have a line, and we have a polygon. So if we talk about a water body, then we can represent this by a line, which is nothing but a line is a combination. If we combine multiple points together, it will make a line. So we can represent this water body in a real world phenomena in a vector mode by a line which basically connects various segments. Similarly, we can represent a house by a point along with the attributes, and then we can also represent this group of trees by this polygon. Polygon means a closed surface where the first point and last point are the same. Similarly, we can represent this group of trees on the top right corner by polygon. Now, I want to this is just a recap that we are doing, and I want to close this by saying that whether to represent house by a point or a polygon also depend on the scale we are mapping. But the fundamental thing is, given a real world phenomena that is occurring, GIS allows us to represent either in the vector mode or in the raster mode, and you are aware of what are the advantages of putting in the raster or vector. Generally, we say raster is take lot of space, but its computation is faster. But in the vector mode, then because of its good aesthetic sense, the maps are generally depicted in the form of a vector. The topology could be represented, and those network based operations can be easily done using the what you call as a vector based model. However, the complexity is more because the topology on those intersections has to be considered when we are performing those vector based operations. Okay, now talking about the spatial data analysis, we can define it as computing information, a new information that provides some insight from the existing stored data. So if we talk about the GIS life cycle or GIS activities that we perform, so we starting from the requirement gathering to the data collections, organizations, putting them into some form of a database, and then so the objective is once we have gathered the data, understood the requirement, now to carry out the data analysis so that we are able to get the answers we are looking for. This is where we should spend most of the time, but unfortunately because GIS being an information system, so unless we feed the data, nothing comes out. So a lot of time also goes into the preparation of the data, but ultimately once the data is prepared, then the purpose of spatial data analysis is what kind of queries that we are putting it should be able to answer using those data sets that we have stored. Now talking about from the GIS data model perspective, so data analysis, there can be operations either in the vector mode or in the raster mode. So basically every time we are looking at a certain phenomena in a spatial domain, or we are trying to relate how does a one phenomena relate to other phenomena over a distance, we are talking about the spatial data analysis. For example, if we are given a crime events and we are given the ward map of a, let's say, of a municipality, then we can find out where in which ward how many crimes are happening. Or if we are given, suppose we take IRS as a location and we want to find out how many what are the various ATMs or various banks within a vicinity of 1 kilometer, so then we can draw a buffer taking IRS as a center, and then we can find out how many ATMs or various banks are available within a 1 kilometer buffer. Now spatial analysis is not new if we go back in history. So this example is of a London cholera outbreak. It happened somewhere in 1854, and then there was Dr. John Snow, who basically mapped the location of the water pump along with the patient who died due to this cholera death. At that time, it was considered as a mysterious disease. It was not understood as it was a waterborne disease. So Dr. John Snow, what he did was, this was pre-GIS era. He prepared a map, pre-computer era, I'm saying. So what he did was he mapped the location of the water pump, because he was sure that this disease that is happening is because of the water the people are drawing from the water pump. Now to prove his case, what he was trying to do was see the relationship between the water pump and the deaths that have caused. So this he plotted the locations of all the water pumps along with the deaths that has caused due to cholera. The moment he plotted it, the information becomes evident, the pattern becomes evident. If you see, most of these deaths are confined within the vicinity of the central water pump, wherein most of the people were drawing water from. So hence he was able to prove that this is caused due to the water drawn from the water pump. And then once he shared this with the authorities, the first step was to take the handle off of that water pump, so the people can't draw water from the pump, and the number of deaths come drastically down. So this was a initial early example where the spatial analysis was used to find out the relating one phenomena with other, and how to come up to ensure the authorities to take some preventive actions to reduce the deaths. Now, talking about the broad classifications of various GIS capabilities operation related to spatial data analysis. So yesterday you have seen the classification, retrieval and measurement operations, which are primarily coming from the geometry or also from the associated attributes query, either attribute data, either in the form of an attribute query or the spatial query. In today's session, we'll talk about overlay operations. We are looking for combining two or more spatial data layers. And we also talk about neighborhood functions, where we are looking into the proximity relationship between the current location as well as the surrounding. This will see both in the vector mode as well as in the raster mode. Now talking about the overlay operations, as I said, which is basically combining two or more than two layers to look at the phenomena over the two layers and then derive new information for extracting information from the two layers. Now there are some precondition to do, if you want to perform this overlay operations. So as it says that the standard overlay operator primarily takes two input layers, and it also assumes that both the layers or the data sets are georeferenced. Further, they should also overlap in the study region, which means at least some boundaries will be shared. So the reason for having these three last two precondition is that if we don't have these conditions satisfied, then the result will be senseless, because it will be very senseless to have two data sets which are not georeferenced and not overlapping in the same study area. The other thing that we are looking for in the overlay operation is basically we are comparing the characteristics here, both the geometry as well as the attributes, especially in the case of the vector layer, to produce a new output layer wherein the characteristics of the both layer are taken into the consideration. So if you look at this top infographic, so we have a layer 1 polygon, again a layer 2, so we can consider this as a soil and this as a second as a layer land use. Then we get a new layer as an output wherein we have the information of both the land use as well as the soil. So in this case we are doing a kind of an intersection, or we can say we can also do a union, wherein the output will contains the not only the attributes coming from both the layers, but also where there will be the intersection of the boundaries, the new polygons will be created, which will also inherit the attributes from the input layers. Now in the case of a raster, again we are trying to look at the two layers and combining them. So let's take an example of computing an NDVI. So we have a NIR layer and a IR layer. So what we can do is we can compute the NDVI by using the formula of NIR minus R divided by NIR plus R. So this will be done on a cell by cell basis, so we can get the new output as an image. So the basically overlay operation, as we said, is primarily used for combining two or more layers to arrive at a new information that we are looking for, having the characteristics and also deriving the attributes from, especially in the case of vector, both the layers. Now talking about the main overlay operators in the vector, as we said, the three primitives are point, line and polygon. So the various overlay that are possible is we can do an intersection, we can do a union, we can do a clip. Now if you want, you can also relate it to your Boolean algebra. We can say AND operation, which is an intersection operation, or OR operation, which is a union operations. Similarly, in the case of a raster, we can do, as I said, the arithmetic operator. The last example what you talked about, maybe NIR, that NDVI computation, we can use various arithmetic operations. We can also use various comparison operation, relational operations, or logical operators, or we can also use some conditional operators, or a combination of all of these could also be used. Now let's also try to understand the basic principle of how does a overlay operation works in the case of a vector data. So here we are considering two layers. We have a layer 1 and layer 2, and those preconditions are satisfied here. Both are georeferenced, and then they are also overlapping in the study region. So in the case of a layer 1, there are two polygons 1 and 2, and the attributes are, there are two attributes, ID and class. So polygon 1 has an attribute ID of 1 and class as 0. Polygon 2 has ID, the ID field has a value 2 and class as 100. Similarly in layer 2, there are two polygons 1 and 2, and also have two attributes ID and cost. Here the ID of polygon 1 is 1 and the cost is 10, and in the case of a second polygon, the ID is 2 and the cost is 5. So assume that we are combining them, trying to overlay them on the top of each other. Then if we try to put this on the top of this, visualize that I'm trying to put this on the top of this. So what will happen is, wherever those line segments are intersected, the new polygons will be computed. So initially in the layer 1 we have two polygons, in the layer 2 we have again two polygons. So if I overlay them, then wherever this line is crisscrossing with this line, so you can see here that four polygons, separate polygons are computed. However, please also note at the attribute table that is generated of the output layer, it has the characteristics of both the it is extracting the attribute data from layer 1 as well as layer 2. So if you see the attribute data of this output layer, it has an ID field. It also have a class field coming from the layer 1 and the cost field coming from the layer 2. Now if you drill down into this and see how does these values are extracted. So if you look at this polygon 1 in the output layer, we'll see that this has come from the polygon 1 in layer 1, and this region falls in polygon 1 of layer 2. Hence it is drawing the value of class as 0 and the cost as 10 coming from this polygon 1 in layer 2. Similarly, if you go to this polygon 2 here in the output layer, the class is 100. Why? Because it is extracting those information from the polygon 2 in layer 1, and also since it is coming in this portion, it will be extracting the attribute of cost, which is 10 in the case of a polygon 1. So like this we can compute the other attribute information. Now this overlay can also be done with reference to a point and a polygon, also line in the case of a polygon. So point and polygon is a commonly used operations to find out which are the points that are lying within the polygon or outside the polygon. Earlier I given an example of crime events and the, let's say, the ward map or the police beat boundary. Then we can find out how many crimes are happening in various beats. Now this is a case where we don't have the specific information or the attribute, or for example in the case of a crime, in the attribute I don't have information of this crime is occurring in which ward or a beat. Because if I have in the case of an attribute, have that information as a form of an attribute, then I can immediately find out those information. But here I'm trying to use the spatial relationship to find out with the reference to point and the polygon whether the point is falling in which polygon. Now in this case we are taking an example of a met station, which is represented by these three symbols, and we are also taking a polygon map as a forest and non-forest. So if we overlay them, then what we can do is it will also extract the information from based on the attribute of the second layer, which is the polygon map. So we can get an output. The output will be in the form will be of point type, having the characteristics also inherited from the polygon map, which in this case, if you look at this output met station map, you will see that apart from the point ID, it also contains the another attribute, which is land use, which is extracted from the forest polygon map. So now we can identify that point 1 is coming within the forest regions because of this. Similarly, this point map 2 is coming in the forest region, and point 3 is coming in the non-forest region. So this is quite a good useful information in case we have the information about the location specific information about a phenomena, but we want to look it spatially and check in which region that is following. Similarly, we can also do a line in a polygon kind of an operation where we have a road line map. Here there are three road map, the three roads being depicted as 1, 2 and 3, and then this is a junction at which they intersect. And then we also have a forest polygon map. So here we are looking for what segment of the, using this line in a polygon kind of an operation, we can find out what segment of the line is inside the forest and what segment of line is outside the forest. So if we overlay them, forest on the top of this line map, what we'll get is, again, wherever these lines are intersecting, the new segments will be computed. So in the original line segment I have three roads, but in the output you will see that I have now 5 roads, because at wherever this intersecting, the new segment will be computed. Now the attributes of this road number 1 is extracted from the earlier road apart from the land use information, which in this case is a forest. So if you look at the line new road segment 1, its old ID is 1, the new ID is generally computer automatically generated started with automatic start with 1, but important thing is now we are able to find out that this segment 1 is inside the forest. Similarly, if you look at this 2 segment, which is again created because this segment of the forest was intersecting with this line segment. So this segment 2 now is in outside the forest, and so on for the subsequent 5 roads. So using these kinds of spatial relationship operations by doing an overlay, we can find out the information which was earlier lacking and come up with the new information. Now, for performing this overlay operation, another, as I said, is the intersect based operations now done on the, let's say, the 2 polygons. So given here are the 2 polygons, input 1 and the input 2. The input 1 has 2 polygons A and B, and the intersect data of the input 2 has these 4 polygons 1, 2, 3 and 4. So as an intersect, as I said, you can consider as a Boolean AND operation. So we are looking for those features that are common for both the layers, layer A as well as layer B. So if we try to visualize that I'm trying to put this on top of this, so only those features which are common to both the layers will be coming. That's why you can see this there is a corner being cut out, because this corner is outside. This is not common to both the layers. And again the same thing is the new polygons are created wherever there is an intersection. So if you look at this here, polygon 1, and again this new polygon 4 has come because of this B and the intersection with 1. But again the important thing is it will have the information of attribute information derived from both the layers, input 1 as well as the intersect data or the input 2. Let's take one example. For example, if we see in the output polygon 1, we'll see that input 1 it has derived this A information from the input 1, and since this is following in this color, so it is again putting as a input 2 again as a 1. So like this we can compute for the other polygons also, but the important thing, as I said, is we are looking for common regions. Not only it will give us the common feature, but also the information coming from both the layers. Now this could be utilized in various operations. Here I give an example of let's say a landslide has happened and we have mapped that. Then what we can do is, and we also have information on the vegetation of that study region, then if I just intersect the landslide zone along with the vegetation, we can immediately find out what the damage that has happened to the vegetation. So we can find out those information. And also if we intersect, let's say, the roads along with the landslide, then we can find out the damage that has caused due to the landslide. So all those kinds of operations are possible if we use those intersect operations. Another common operation that we use is the union. Now this is an OR operation, which means it will keep all the features which are either in A or in B, or which are also in common. For example, here we are taking an example of a land parcel and a soil type. So the output will contain another polygon layer. However, wherever there will be an intersection between layer 1 and layer 2, in this case land parcel and soil type, a new polygons will be computed which will have attributes coming from the land parcel as well as the soil type. So now this is a new kind of information that we have derived, wherein the output map we can find out what kind of soil types are there in each land parcel. So this is a new information that we are extracting, which was not there if we consider separately the land parcels or the soil types. Now to understand this, again let's take another infographic. So if we have an input, 2 inputs, so this is input 1 and this is my input 2, and I'm doing a union, which means I will get all the areas which are in 1 or 2 or which are also in common. Then if I look at this purple region, it has 2 polygons 1 and 2, and the ID has 2 fields, ID and station, having value 1 for ID, station 1, ID 2, station 2 for the polygon 2. Now if we talk about second polygon represented by this circle A, it is one kind of a region having ID 1 and type A. Now again we are, in this case we are doing an overlay, but operation is a union. Again wherever there is an intersection, new polygons will be computed which have the fields from both the layers. So if I talk about 1, you can see here that it is deriving the information from the purple object, because there is no common region between A and the purple object, hence you will see that there is a null value for the type. Similarly, if we go to, let's say, this operator as 3, then we can find out that it is extracting the value of 2 because it is lying within the purple object polygon 2 and also object A, so that's why you are getting a 2 A values. Now if you look at closely again the output of a union, you can see that it also contains the output of the intersection. So common regions and also the regions which are not common to both are also appearing in this union operations. So another operator that is widely used operation is called as a clip, or we also call it as a cookie cutter operator. Now to understand this, let's take an example. So suppose I have the road network, this green line, suppose it represents the road network, and then this is some study region that I have got. But what I want is out of the whole road network, I am only looking for the road network that are within or confining to this bounding box of my study region. Then what I can use is I can use a concept of clip or a cookie cutter, wherein I can cut that, put a hole in that kind of a dove, if you take an example, and then whatever I will get is only the output of the road network. I will get only the output as a road network, however restricted only to the my study region. Here there will be no change in the attribute information, because here we are taking the source layer and the cookie cutter layer, and the output is again a subset of the input layer. Here I am just representing again the map, that image that I put is only for representation, but the output, if you see, is only the road network that is confined to this region. Another operator is called as the erase operator. Now this is unlike the clip which you have seen earlier. Here also it takes two input. One is the input region, second is the erase region. But thing is, it just put a hole, basically eliminate that regions from the study area. So this basically removes some portions that are not suitable, let's say, for further analysis in our study. We can remove those portions or mask this portion out from our region. Now to again understand this in a little bit more details, let's take an example of a, as I say, a dove. So if we have an input layer and we have our clip or a erase layer as a cutter, then what does the clip operator do is it keeps the cookies and deletes the dove. So what we get is only, if we take as a clip as a cookie cutter, so whatever inside it I am getting. But in the case of an erase, what it does it removes that portion, but I get the output as the whole dove with that portions removed. So erase keeps the dove, however delete the cookie portion. So that is the difference between the clip and the erase. So clip extract features inside the boundary, so we'll get only whatever is inside the boundaries. However, erase keep features which is outside the boundary and remove what is inside. Another operator that is widely used is called as symmetric difference operators. Now if you look at this, there are two input layer, green and yellow. So in the output you'll see you are getting all the features which are in A or in B but not in both. So this you can use it as a symmetric difference operator, where you want to find the difference between input layer 1 and input layer 2. We'll see example in the subsequent slide also. Another example operator that is widely used with reference to vector data is called as a dissolve. As the name suggests, it basically removes the boundaries in the polygon to create a single polygon having the bigger region. So what we mean is, suppose we have this input layer, let's say the WOD map, MDDA WOD map of Dehradun. Then if I just dissolve all these WOD boundaries, then I will get the whole WOD map irrespective of the WOD boundaries. So we can use this for wherever we want to dissolve, also eliminate the boundaries and create a new polygon having only the outside region. So this you can again take an example of, if you have a state map of India and we dissolve based on the states, then I can get the India map. So this is again operator that is used when we want to basically eliminate the individual polygons and want to work as a whole polygon as a whole, or where we want to extract, as I said, the given a state layer and we want to find out the let's say the India boundary, in case we don't have the India boundary with us. Now to understand this symmetric difference, let's take an example of this using this infographic where I'm taking an example for Kedarnath uh, as a use case. So we have this pre-disaster image of the Kedarnath, and we are aware of what calamity happened at that time. So there was a lake burst and a lot of precipitation that happened. So this is pre Kedarnath, and this is after the Chorabari lake has gone burst and a lot of precipitation has happened, so a lot of damage has caused. So what we can do is we can map the pre-region and we can also map the post area affected, and then we can use the symmetric difference to find out the areas that are damaged. So using this kind of approach, we can find out the damages that has happened with the reference to the image 1 and also the pre-disaster as well as the post-disaster. Another operator that is widely used, commonly used, is the buffering operations, which we call as a buffer. You can consider it as a spatial proximity regions over a selected features or all the features. Basically, we are trying to look at the area of influence. Now, this buffering could be done either with the reference to point, line, and a polygon, but output will always be a polygon. Now, this buffering is used in various scenarios. As one example I gave was with reference to, let's say, IARS, which are the various ATMs of various banks within a vicinity of, let's say, 1 kilometer. Similarly, it can also be used in other scenarios. For example, if we are widening the road, then we can find out what are the shops that are within, let's say, 60 meter of the road, so that the necessary action could be done for relocation or compensation and so on. Now, again, the buffering can be, we could have a single proximity buffer, or we could also create a multiple buffers, which we call as a multi-ring buffer. For example, here we are taking an example of a road segment. Then we can create multiple ring buffer wherein we could create rings representing different regions. So for example, it is 0 to 100, then 100 to 200, and then 200 to 300. So this is called as a multi-ring buffer. Now these kind of multi-ring buffer are very useful when you want to study this phenomena with reference to various influence or envelope regions. For example, if you are looking for assuming this as a main roads, and we want to find out how many let's say schools are within a distance of 100 meter, 200 meter, and 300 meter. So using this kind of a multi-ring buffer will help us in answering those kinds of questions. So having talked about the raster, the vector-based operations, wherein we talked about the overlay operations, the principle of overlay operation, and get into various kinds of overlay operations like intersect, point in polygon, line in polygon, union, clip, erase, and so on, and then symmetric difference, dissolve. Now let's get into the raster-based analysis. Now again, in the case of an overlay operation, in the case of a raster, primarily done using a term called as map algebra, wherein in this case our operands are the layers, so we call as the rasters, and the operators can be used various kinds of arithmetic operators, relational and logical operators, or combination of all. Now these are generally performed on a cell by cell basis. But the important thing is there is no computation of geometry, because we are assuming that all are confined to the same study region having the same pixel size. So we can generalize it as an output raster is nothing but a raster expression, which can consist of the raster layers as an operand, and then operator as various arithmetic, logical, and relational operators. For example, if we have a land use map and a slope map, suppose in the raster mode, and we say we are looking for those areas where the land use is forest, as well as, so we use and, which means both the condition has to be true, and the slope is a, let's say, the steep slope. So it will extract the land use as forest from this first land use map, and also do an intersection, which means both the conditions has to be true, which means the output pixel should contain those information where the land use is forest as well as the slope is steep. So I can get a new output combining the two input layers of land use and slope. Now raster operations can primarily be divided into four kinds. One is a local operations, as we said, is performed on a cell by cell basis. Other is a focal operations, or also called as a neighborhood operation, which is basically done considering the pixels around with this surrounding. I think this you have studied in your first module also, where we talk about the various filtering convolutions. So all those will come under this focal kind of an operation. Third is, we are, instead of looking at the cell by cell, or a, let's say, a focal or a neighborhood, we can also look it as a zone by zone basis and compute the output. And finally, there is a global operation which consider each and every pixel in the image for computing the output. The classic example is the Euclidean distance. Now talking about the local operation, as I said, is done on a cell by cell basis. So suppose this is input layer 1 and this is input layer 2. Assuming, again, let's take an example of an NDVI, so a NIR band and a IR band. Then with reference to each and every pixel, I can compute the NDVI, which is by NIR minus R divided by NIR plus R. So as I said, it is done on a cell by cell basis. The output value is a function of the input value. In this case, we are doing a NDVI computation. Now this can be done on a single layer also, or the multiple layers also it is possible. Another important things to keep in mind is the no data cell value, which is one way of telling the software system that we don't have a data defined, so please ignore them in our operations. Now the various examples are the overlay and the reclassification operations, all come under the gamut of the local operation. But important thing is, it only consider the individual cells, does not consider the vicinity or surrounding pixels, and all the operations are done on a cell by cell basis. Let's take one simple example where we have an input layer A and an input layer B. Given these values in the A and B, suppose in the first case we want to add the value of 10 to the existing pixel values. As you said, in the local operation can be done on a single layer or multiple layers. So now the output will be done on each and every pixel. Now we can assume that a band or an image as a matrix or an array, and we are adding each and every value to each and every element of the array. So 5 plus 10 is 15, similarly 5 plus 10 is 15, and so on. We can compute this, or we can also say this plus this, A plus B. So suppose C2, we are saying A plus B, again done on a cell by cell basis. For example, if we talk about the first cell, the value of A is 5, the value of B is 4, we'll get the value as 9. Similarly, let's talk about this cell in the output. So the value of this cell in the A is 6, the value of this in the B is 1, we'll getting the value as 7. Or it could also be the complex expression of A minus B divided by A plus B into 100. Here we are only considering the integer values, not the floating point values. So as I said, the classic example being the NDVI. So given two bands, we can compute various kinds of operations on those bands and compute various indices. Now apart from the arithmetic operators, we can also use logical operators and combine them with relational operators. Let's take an example here. For example, we have two layers, A denoting the forest, where the value F denote the region where there are forest areas, and other are no data values. And the second is an elevation layer depicting the values ranging from 4, 6 and 7, which is 4 denote 400 meters, 6 denote 600 meter, and 7 denotes 700 meters. So assuming that we want to find an area where the value is forest and the elevation should be less than 500. So we are looking for those regions in layer A and layer B where the region should be forest, and since we have put an AND, which means both the condition has to be true and the elevation value should be less than 500. So let's see the output, why this is not coming in the output. So if you look at these pixels in the A, so if we look at this pixel in A, this is F, which is fine, but the value of B here is 7, which is, and it says that it should be less than 500, but this is 700, hence it is not coming into the as a output in the output. if you consider this as a pixel, let's see the value of this is f in the first layer, which is okay, and the value in this is 4, so it is perfectly satisfying the condition, hence we get this as an output. Now output of these kinds of operation will be a boolean, which means you will get a value of 1 or a 0, and then we can represent them by various various colors or symbols. Similarly, we can also use an OR operator or the other logical operator of XOR, which is called as an exclusive OR, wherein the difference between OR and XOR is in OR the output will come if either of the condition is true or both may be true. In the case of the XOR, only if either of the condition is true, not both are true, is called as an XOR. The other common operation of local categories called as a reclassification, wherein given an input image, we can reassign them based on our, for simplicity, for generalization, for usage in various other other subsequent step of analysis to reclassify the raster into, let's say, the suitable, not suitable, or generalize them. For example, here we are given the base raster. So what we are doing is we are assigning a new value to those old values. So here all the values between 1 and 3 assign the new value as 5. Hence you can see that these 3 are represented as 5 here. Similarly, 1 in this is represented again by 5 here. So reclassification, again, a very important step when you perform in a raster mode, and it's widely used, as I said, for simplicity, computing various suitability indexes and so on. Now one more difference that we need to make here in case of reclassification vis-a-vis, let's say, the symbology that we define for a layer is that the symbology is only for the layer display purposes. There is no change to the actual data sets, but in reclassification, as you've seen, we are recomputing, assigning new value to the rasters, so there is a change in the data that is happening so that we can use them into the subsequent steps. But whatever we change in the symbology, what you must have learned in the previous lecture, was only for the display purposes. Now the reclassification can be done both for the continuous raster. For example, here we are given a distance to road as a continuous raster ranging from 0 to 30,000 meters, suppose. Then what we can do is we can reclassify them based on our assumptions or our operations requirement into various zones. For example, 0 to 10,000 meter could be given as 1, and 10,000 to 2 can be given 2, and after that could be given the value 3. So we can convert the continuous into a different reclassified result based on our requirement. Now we can also compute the discrete also. The first example we have seen in the previous slides. Again, into reclassify them, as I said, into various categories based on our preference, either as a low, medium, or a high. We can even mark them as no data so that they are not used in the subsequent analysis. For example, here we are given a land use map having these 5 classes represented by number 21, 22, 23, 43, and 81. So in the reclassified based on some preference, they have classified those regions into 5 classes, into basically 3 classes with 1 as a no data region. So this is quite useful when we are doing our, let's say, multi-layer operation or multi-criteria evaluation, where we are trying to create the suitability indexes for various layers and then computing them on the final overlay to arrive at the desired results. Apart from the local, which is primarily done on a cell-by-cell basis, as I said, the classic example what we have seen is the overlay or arithmetic logical operators, reclassification being another. The other category of operator that are called as a focal, wherein not only the current cell but the surrounding pixels are also taken into the consideration. Now the focal operation that we perform, we could be looking at various kinds of statistics. It could be sum, it could be variety, which is what are the various values that are present in this, what is the majority class, minority, sum, mean, and so on. Here I'm taking an example of a focal statistics as a sum being the statistics. So this is the input raster layer, and this is the output that is computed, but we are only considering on this part of this input pixel, which we have put it on the below this input layer. You can see that the values are 32354 2154, and we are computing the sum for the pixel number 5. So here we are taking the window as 3 by 3. So, and we are computing the sum. So if you look at it closely, so the value the 5 will be replaced by the sum of all the pixels. So we can do this 3 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1 plus 4 and add it to the initial value of 5. That's why we are getting the value as 24. So like this is like a moving window thing that you have studied in a remote sensing module, wherein this window will keep on moving and the central pixel values is computed, not only considering the central pixel values but also the surrounding pixel values. The window, the neighborhood region shape can change. It could be 3 by 3 or 3 by 4. So you can perform like whatever you are used to doing, filtering, the median filter, and then those kinds of operations are nothing but coming in the gamut of a focal operations. The another operations that we used is called as the zonal operation, where instead of working on, let's say, local cell by cell or focal considering the central pixel and the neighboring pixels, here we are looking primarily in zones. Now to give an example, suppose if we have a soil map and we with the soil map with various soil classes, if I just find out, let's say, the sum of count the number of pixels of all the soil classes, I will get the number of pixels and can multiply by the size of pixel to compute the area. But those soils will be at different will be distributed in different regions of the study area. So if you want to find out the statistics with reference to various, considering them as various zones, then we can use this zonal statistics kind of an operator, which takes two input layer. It takes as a zone layer the input layer, the input value layer, and gives an output with the operations we perform on those zones only, considering those zones. Rest are all ignored. So basically it takes two input. One is the zone region defining the shape and locations that we are considering. The input layer from which the features will be, the operation will be, the statistics will be computed, and the output is again given in the form of a zone. However, the output could be in the form of a table or also as a raster layer. Now again, the various statistics that are possible here are minimum, maximum, majority, minority, and sum, and so on. So this is taking example of a maximum in this case. So this the class example is the zonal statistics operations that we perform. As I said, the output of the zonal operations can either be a raster layer, which means all the cells that are within the zone will have the same value on the output raster layer, or we can also take the output as a table. So the advantage of output taking as a table will be that each row in the table will contain the statistics for each row, having the two columns, ID and the value for those, all the attributes that we are looking for. The good thing about computing as a table is then we can again join them back to the main our input layer for performing some further analysis instead of storing them as a separate raster output. So again, this is a very good operation where we want to consider the whole zones. We want to perform statistics over a zone area, not considering each and every pixel or the surrounding, only certain blocks of the regions. Finally, in the raster is a global operations, wherein for each and every pixel, the whole the other pixels, all the pixels in the study regions are considered. The example is equilibrium distance, wherein each pixel in the output contains the value of distance, which is with reference. Suppose we take this road as a example, then each pixel will contains the distance with reference to the nearest road. That's why it is computed on each and every cell, because each pixel has to compute this distance, which is the nearest feature, what is the minimum distance with reference to each pixel. So it has to go over all the study region, considering each and every feature in this study region. In this case, we are taking the distance to the roads. Now the other there are also terrain related operations in GIS, so we can use it for computing the slope, the aspect, and also for extracting the contours. Again, slope and aspect can again come under the gamut of our local based focal based operations. Another term that you will quite frequently come across if you are using this raster based operations in a from the software perspective, the concept of a map algebra or a raster calculator. Most of these things can be done on the raster calculator, what I have shown in the previous example of local based operations. So we'll get the information on the layers, the various operators, the conditional operators are here, and then you can perform various operations. In this case, taking an example of a single layer, given an elevation layer example, we want to find out only those areas which are greater than 2000 feet. As I said, the output will be in the form of a boolean 0 or 1, so we'll get only those regions which are satisfying the criteria. In this case, elevation greater than 2000 feet. I'm representing by red and the hollow color or white color. Now let's come into the very important thing about, we are given two different choices vis-a-vis this data model. We have considered the vector based operations, the raster based operations. Now how to decide which one to choose and what to use in different scenarios. So let's do a little bit, get into a little bit more details on those aspects. Now they are treated separately primarily because GIS software is restricted by the GIS software which runs them either mode, so you can run either in the vector or in the raster. However, GIS software do provide the capability of converting raster to a vector and the vice versa. In some of the operations, GIS software also allows us to use raster, for example, vector data in the case of a raster based operations. As I said, in the case of a zonal statistics, consider that example, we can define the zone either as a vector layer or also as a raster layer. But inherently, what happens behind the scene is the data, as I said, the software can work either in the one or the in either of the two domains, not in both the domains. So data will be converted to the raster behind the scene before the operation starts. Now some of these things to choose vector or raster primarily depending on the GIS project per se, depending on the data availability sources and objectives. But something also depends on the data that you have in hand or data availability and in which format it is, and then also depending, as I said, on the software capabilities. And something we have also keep into mind considering the raster and vector format as data complexity and efficiency. We say that the raster is a simple model, the results computation is fast, whereas vector is a complex model. As is seen, if we do this union and intersect kind of operation on a large number of polygons, it tends to get slow because you can very well understand them, because at every intersection the new polygons are computed, the topology has to be computed, so it is quite a time consuming. Now to do this comparison, let's take an example of two very popular operations that is widely used in GIS based system is the overlay and the buffering. Now we can compare, we can say that our overlay operation is nothing but a local operation, let's say in the raster domain. Now, but however, there are some differences. For example, if we do a vector based overlay operations, then what we are doing is, and in this case assuming we are doing an intersection, so it is computing the intersection between the two features and insert points or compute new features wherever there is an intersection. Now this does not happens or not required in the case of a raster based system, because we are assuming that all the cell size are same and extent are same. Even if they are not same, we can do the resampling and then still do the computation faster. But the important thing is there is no intersection of feature happening, no insertion of or new geometry being computed. That's why we are saying the computation is less complicated than calculating those intersection, computing the geometry and so on. Now from the raster advantage we get if we do a local operation, let's say the overlay is, we get access to the various tools and operators which I have shown you here. So we got logical, relational and those kinds of operators available to us. But in the vector mode, if you see, whenever we do an intersection, what it does, it computes the new geometry, gives an output having the combined attributes of both the input layers, and whatever all the subsequent processing on the attribute has to be done after the overlay operation has been done. Whereas in raster we can do other kind of operations, calculations side by side if you are doing the raster local operations. But in the case of a vector overlay, so it does gives an output attribute, and then subsequent operation, if you want to combine them, sum them, the area and so on and so forth, has to be done after the operations is over. Now the other way of looking at is the raster based overlay is preferred in the case of projects where we, as I said, because of it takes computation is less and returns the result fast, where we have a large number of layers and which takes quite and the considerable, there is a computations are more. However, there are some advantages when we talk about the vector overlay operations. For example, if you do a vector overlay operation of multiple layers, then not only it gives you the output layer having the geometry of all the input layers, but also the attributes of each and every layer that we are using overlay are also given as an output. So we can combine multiple attributes, and those attributes can be used in various analysis, querying, both in attribute query or the spatial query. We can analyze them individually, or we can analyze in the combination. Now this is not available in raster, because if you remember raster, for each raster there is only one attribute could be. Each raster can depict only one attribute. So if you have suppose some vegetation stand layer having various attributes, then for that each attribute has to be presented by a separate layer. So that's why where the vector operations are much better if you want to if you are looking for combining attributes together and then using them into the subsequent operations. In the raster mode, for each attribute a new raster has to be computed, then only can be used for the further operations. However, for the large number of data sets, then this raster operations are better, because you will get the amount of time spent on those type of computations will be less. Let's take another example of a buffering, and we can consider buffering as our physical distance measurement that we have seen in our previous slides. Now in the case of a vector based buffering operation, it uses actual x and y coordinates for measuring the distance. However, if you see in the case of whatever we have discussed in the case of Euclidean distance, it is done on a cell by done using cell as a measurement units. So what we are trying to say here is, if you use a buffering with reference to vector, then the buffering can be very accurate with reference to the distance we are looking for, and this accuracy can be very important in case we have very stringent rules, let's say riparian zone management programs that we have got. Now if we go to the other side, then we can also say that the buffering operation considering the vector mode is quite flexible, because as we discussed, we could have a single buffer, we could have a multi-ring buffer to see a phenomena over a multiple regions of influence or spatial proximity. Where in raster what we get is a continuous distance measuring raster. We don't have those kind of multiple distance measurements that we have got. For that we have to do, let's say it's not possible in the raster domain. So what we do in the raster is we do a reclassification based on our suitability, but we can't define, let's say, different buffer zone based on the continuous raster. From the vector perspective, the buffering operation can be quite useful if we have different zones of buffer and we want to select different zones across each regions, export them as a separate layer, use them in further operations. And we also have an option of, if you get the buffered output and wherein the different regions are merging, we can dissolve them also. So those kind of capabilities are possible in vector. However, these are very difficult to do and manipulate the separate distance in the raster operation. So there are some pros and cons when using the vector in a raster based operation. So keep these things in mind when you are performing these operations. So both have their advantage and some pros and cons in various scenarios. So you could consider them based on your suitability and the project in hand. Now let me take some time now to put all this in perspective by taking an example of a site suitability, typical example of site suitability of using various operations that we have dealt with in this class, and then let's try to put them into perspective. How do we go about using those operations in a typical situation? Here we are taking an example of finding the suitable sites for constructing new schools. And these are hypothetical criteria that I'm using. So the criteria are the school should be 1 kilometer away from the existing inter colleges. Second is the school should be at least 1 kilometer or should be from the major roads, but to avoid accident it should be within 2 kilometers. So the region that we are looking is within 1 kilometer and 2 kilometers, and also to gather the good number of students and to avoid construction in the same regions, congested areas, we are given some preference. So first preference is given to, let's say, the medium density residential area, which I will consider in this example. So there are three criteria. The school should be away from the existing inter colleges, should be within 1 to 2 kilometer of the main road, and should be in the medium density regions. When we are given this problem, we should consider the input data that we have got. So here I got three layers. Input colleges represented by diamond symbol, the major roads, and the residential regions denoted by the green color. Now the first requirement is the school should be 1 kilometer away from the existing inter colleges. So what we can do is we can create buffer around those inter colleges to mark the regions that the spatial proximity wherein the existing school can't be constructed. So we can use a buffering to go as a step 1 for fulfilling the criteria number 1. Now for the criteria 2, it says that there should be within 1 kilometer to 2 kilometer. Then we can use multi-ring buffer. First make a buffer of 1000 meters and second with 2000. So what we are looking for suitable region is between 1 and 2 kilometers. Now our third criteria was to find out those regions with the medium density residential area. So I'm assuming that we have a residential facility here and we have an attribute called as the density, where the value of the density is medium. So I'm using an attribute query for filtering the residential based on the medium density. So I got these regions. So I've got three input layers: inter colleges, roads, and residential. The existing school should be 1 kilometer away, so we make a buffer. For major roads within 1 to 2 kilometer, we have used a multi-ring buffer. For residential, we have used an attribute query for selecting the medium density regions. Now let's consider the first and the third criteria. Only third A, the school 1 kilometer away from the existing colleges and the medium density areas. Now to satisfy this, what we need to do is we need to remove these regions from our medium density areas, as we can't construct a school as per our criteria. It should be away from 1 kilometer distance from the inter colleges. So what we have done is we have used the erase operator, erasing that buffer from our residential regions. So we are left with only those medium density regions which are with the erase operations of 1 kilometer buffer around the existing inter colleges. Now to finally do the suitable area, what we can do is we can overlay them, overlay our multi-ring buffer with the erase that we have done in the previous slide. So if I do an intersection, I will get the common region and I will get the suitable areas represented in this area. So like this we can do this kind of suitability analysis, which is a very common problem that we do in a GIS analysis. Now this is a raster mode, but similar kind of things you can also do in the raster mode. This is vector mode. You can do definitely the same thing in the raster domain also. So with this I will close. So in this lecture we have gone into the spatial analysis functionality and tools. We started with the overview of the spatial data models, and since there are two data models, vector and raster, similarly we have two kinds of spatial data operations, analysis operation in the vector mode, in the raster mode. We have seen the working of the overlay operations, and we have gone into the what are the various operations in the vector mode, from intersect, union, clip, erase, and so on. We also got into the raster based operation, the primarily of four kinds: local, focal, zonal, and global. Local is done on cell by cell basis, focal is done on over a region or a neighborhood, global considering the zones as the input as a criteria, and global considering on the whole. And finally we have also seen how to do a simple suitability analysis, how those various GIS operations are being used in the vector mode. So I will stop here. I will wait for your questions.